Okay, welcome back to part two of our conversation about how to read research. In part one, we left off in looking at the abstract and the introduction, which are the first two steps of a detailed reading of a research article, right? And then the next thing to do is to go to the discussion. So we are going to head over to the discussion section of this article, which, as you can see, starts up here. We have quite a few pages in this article. But if we skip the method, the procedures, the data analysis, and the results, we get to the discussion, which starts right here. And if you start reading it, you'll read that they restate the goal, maybe cite some references, and then they get into a narrative form of, okay, what does all this data mean? How do we make sense of this data? As you can see, they do have some restated data right here, which also includes some statistics, but they'll explain this in narrative form. They'll make sense of it for you. And a close reading of this will get you very familiar with the successes and the limitations or failures of this research. And you can even see words like this, limitations of this study. So at the end of the discussion, they're going to talk about not only limitations, but perhaps suggestions for future research or suggestions in this case for public health, before they get to the references, which also can be very important. So that's the first thing you do. Then you do go back to the methods, and you skim the results, and then you reread the discussion carefully. So you do go back to the methods at this point, because this is also part of your personal inquiry journal, and you look at the methodology they employed. So this is where I would go back up to right by that current study, right? And it tells me the design of the research, the sample that they used. Right here it tells me 106 graders from each of the 9 middle schools were randomly selected, et cetera, et cetera. Moving on here, how they measured, the procedures that they used, and these details are important, right? And then they move into how they analyze the data. So that is important. Then what you want to do is to connect the methods with the data. You do skim this and see if you can make sense of the results. Okay, and like I said, a lot of it you're going to be like, what is a standard deviation of 0.8 mean? And if you even know what a standard deviation is, right? Some of this is going to make sense, some of it will not. But at least skim it so you've got a general sense of what it is. And then when you go back to the discussion for a second pass of that narrative, some of this is even going to make more sense, okay? And you can be taking notes in your personal inquiry journal for this, and it's going to make a lot more sense. Okay, so that is the information on what to look for, the structure, whoops, I didn't mean to do that, the structure of a research article, let me go there, the structure of a research article, how you read the abstract, the introduction, the methods, how to skim the results, how to read closely a discussion, and use references. And that is the case for any research article. So now that we've gone through that, I want you to think as a group, finally for the last thing. Based on what you've gathered, so once you've got some research, and you know what you're doing with it, you guys need to go to Canvas, and in a group discussion on the final project, I want to know how you're completing this trifold game handout brochure to be successful by the end of the semester. So based on what you've discussed, I want you to divide and conquer. Who will gather more data, who will research games, once a theme is determined, who's gonna be the team lead to make sure you all stay organized. And again, with your trifold, there are earlier examples in this PowerPoint presentation that I will also upload to Canvas, but I want you to think about the overall theme, think public service announcements when you think the overall theme, a catchy title, important information that you want the teens to learn. How do you convey it in a catchy way? How to use sources and how do you cite those sources? Visual images that catch attention should be part of your poster. And then even think about a story or an example to share. You could use either Wes Moore or a deadline character, and or a celebrity example, and or a personal example, and or a research example. So any of those stories or examples that you find in research, that you found in Westmore, that you found in Deadline, or that you know about in current communities or environments in which you are engaged, you can use any of those stories if they're relevant and meaningful. And then websites to go for extra information, of course, must pass the CRAP test. But I also want you to think resources. I want you to think about the phone numbers, the websites that students can reach out to if they want more information. And then, of course, follow APA style for your references. Your handout or brochure should identify the topic, issue, or problem, should have some facts that support it. But more importantly, you should focus on the action that students can take and provide links to resources, phone numbers, and websites that students can use. And the information on here might be duplicated here. This is a larger group of information on your trifold. This is a quick and dirty piece of information that they can walk away with. And lastly, the game is going to reinforce the information. So I want you to think about a game that can hook your students into the information. Again, you can use some ready-made pieces, but how the game is played, the information, the data, the facts, etc. should all be your own. And you want to reinforce the information in an engaging manner, and you can do that before you share the information, during, or after you share the information, depending on how you guys decide on your game. So hopefully that is enough information to make you completely successful with the final project for Reading 100.